I think this has to be one of the more bizarre and weirdly interesting horror games that I've played in a while. I don't know if it's necessarily scary, it's just so odd that it is unsettling. It isn't a story that is mind-blowing, it's just unfathomably unknowable dread. Like, I really can't put my finger on it or use words to most aptly articulate it, but I am compelled. And I think that's the point, because Chorus of Carcosa is heavily inspired by the King in Yellow. So, back in April I did a psychological analysis on the game Signalis, but what I didn't bother to look into were the constant and subtle references to this banned book. I'll hit on that banned part soon. But I'd never heard about the book until the game, and I figured I could get by without it. However, because I neglected learning even just a little bit about the significance of King in Yellow, I missed out a lot of what Signalis had to offer. But here I am again, another game based on the 1895 works of Robert Chambers, so I can't make the same mistake again. I can't explain it, but I want to know. No, I need to know. There is something about the Chorus of Carcosa. It isn't sitting well with me. I have to understand and seek the knowledge because I am being driven mad not knowing. Oddly enough, I did a video on Bloodborne and the curse of knowledge, the burden of insight, so you would think that I know better. And yet I can't help it. Something about this game, this book is calling to me and taking control. But I don't want to go through this alone, so since you're still here, you're coming with me. I'm going to explain the story to Chorus of Carcosa, but before that, I will need to explain a very simplified and abridged explanation of the King in Yellow. I watched Wendigoon and Tale Foundry to learn what little I know, but if I miss anything or got anything incorrect, please let me know. If you enjoy the content, liking the video means I can continue to produce more content for you, but if you don't like it, hitting the dislike button will also help because all engagement is engagement. And welcome
to Chorus of Carcosa.
What is The King in Yellow? It is a book of short stories where, to my understanding, the first four, are connected by the strange and mysterious play, also named The King in Yellow. It should be noted that the book in real life isn't banned. The play inside of the book in that universe is treated as if it were banned, feared, suppressed, and spiritually dangerous like it's forbidden knowledge. Which brings us to why. Now, anyone reading the second act of the play begins to lose their minds, suffering paranoia, delusions, or even death. And the strange thing is that with this book, the play is never shown in full, only hinted at through strange symbols, haunting lines, and a robed, masked figure. A stranger called the King in Yellow. The effect? A creeping sense that reality itself has been altered. The play acts like a psychological virus. It doesn't kill you outright, it changes how you see everything. People will start to question their identity, the truth of the world around them, and whether or not they've been living a lie. You see, the King in Yellow is a presence, a symbol of corruption, lost time, and the fear that once you know the truth, you can't go back, you lose your innocence. At first, I thought maybe people in 1895 just had a different idea of what madness was, but honestly, I think we still fear the same thing today. We just found new words for it. I mean, much of our modern horror is an evolution of theirs. On that note, the King in Yellow is often compared to Lovecraft's mythos, because both deal with cosmic horror. The idea that there are things humans aren't meant to understand. But where Lovecraft's monsters are ancient, otherworldly, and almost alien gods like Cthulhu, vast and uncaring, the King in Yellow is quieter, more personal. It's about madness from within, not just terror from beyond. Instead of monstrous shapes, it gives you symbols, plays, masks, and whispers, less about what is out there and more about how fragile your mind really is. What makes the book so disturbing is that no one actually gets to read the full play. As mentioned, the play only shows up in scattered fragments, just a few lines of dialogue here and there, and this is something you're going to notice in the game, assuming you don't already know the book. There is no complete version, no full script to examine, and yet, somehow, those small pieces are enough to ruin people. The characters who read it don't need the whole thing, they just need a glimpse. A glimpse is enough to push them past the edge. Shit's perturbing and wildly unsettling. I mean, damn, do you know the power these words have? And the play doesn't even need to be complete to have that power. It spreads through implication, through suggestion. It makes people want to understand, to seek it out, and that curiosity is what opens the door. The play doesn't force madness onto its victims, it coaxes them into discovering something that they were never meant to see. And once that process begins, it doesn't end with a single breakdown. It rewrites their perception gradually, until they can't tell what's real and what is part of the play, or whether there was a difference ever to begin with. I can't stop thinking about this ancient idea, one that shows up everywhere if you're paying attention, and I'm almost certain that you've seen it somewhere even if you weren't aware. That if you see God in his true form, your mind breaks. It's in the Bible, no man with their limited vision can see God and live. It's also in Bloodborne, where the more insight you gain, the more you perceive the truth, the eldritch beings, and the faster you descend into madness. Elden Ring explores this concept as well through its madness status effect, the Eye of Sauron, and the boss, Midra. So we see the King in Yellow fits right into that lineage, as he carries the same weight, exposure to something too vast, too pure, too real. Not evil necessarily, just overall incompatible with the human mind. And then there's this symbol. The yellow sign appears through the original stories. It has no definition or explanation. Readers are only told that it triggers a change. The people who come into contact with it lose their grip on reality. Something inside of them turns like a switch they didn't know existed. They start behaving differently. They become consumed by fear and obsession. For all intents and purposes, they are rotting before they even realize it. You'll notice this same symbol scattered across the Chorus of Carcosa. It seeps into the game, clinging, and even shows up during transitory scenes. You might miss it the first time, but once you recognize it, it follows you. But what is Carcosa? Or more accurately, where is Carcosa? The first time we see the name, it's in a song, Cassilda's song. The book opens up with a quote from the play itself, Act 1, Scene 2. 4 lines spoken by a character named Cassilda. Along the shore the cloud waves break, the twin suns sink behind the lake. The shadows lengthen in Carcosa. And that's all we get. No scene, no setting, no location on a map, no one defines it. Characters don't explain what it is, but when they speak of it, it sounds familiar. Like a memory that's right below the surface of murky waters, unclear as ripples distort it even further. It's mythological, in a sense. From Cassilda's song, all we can gather is that there's a lake. There are twin suns, which is cosmologically impossible for our world, and also that time seems to lengthen here. Carcosa is written like a liminal space, not a place that you see, but one that you feel. Always on the edge of articulation, but existing outside the bounds of what and where should be possible. And that is why people describe it through memory, shadows, and metaphor. And that is also why it doesn't feel like anyone ever arrives there. They just realize that they've always been there. To me, this is what adds to the danger element of this uneasy horror of Carcosa. It pulls in people who are already unraveling, people who think that they're looking for answers or meaning or escape, but Carcosa doesn't offer any of that. It just waits. And the longer you stay in its presence, the harder it becomes to remember why you wanted anything in the first place. The Tale Foundry had this really cool explanation that I just have to share with you, because I find his interpretation fascinating. He says that Carcosa is heaven, but heaven is gone and in ruins. So then we turn to the figure himself, the King in Yellow, the character. He exists inside the fictional play that appears in the first few stories, but even there he's barely seen, and yet he remains a prominent figure, like he's always quietly standing in the shadows of people's consciousnesses. Characters mention him, Some say they've met him, but like Carcosa, he enters through suggestion more than presence. And when he does appear, he's always wearing a pale mask. This aspect of his character is magnetically unnerving. You want to stop looking, but you can't seem to peel your eyes away. One of the few and only lines that directly points to him comes during a scene with two characters, Cassilda and Camilla. They're speaking to a stranger, someone who refuses to remove their disguise. But that's when Camilla realizes that something is wrong. "You, sir, should unmask." "Indeed?" "Indeed, it's time. We have all laid aside disguise, but you."
I wear no mask.
That stranger is never named, but many interpret him as the king himself. When the stranger says, "I wear no mask," it's one of the few times we glimpse into the king's impact directly. He is a force, and his statement doesn't cause terror because of what's revealed, it causes fear because nothing is. What they assume was a mask turns out to be his real face, and there's nothing behind it. No identity, no soul, just the shape that looks human, an anthropomorphic outline, close enough to resemble us but hollow in all the ways that matter, enough to scare the living crap out of us. People are always driven to seek meaning, to understand, but nothing terrifies us more than something that we can't comprehend. And that is what makes the pallid mask so unsettling. It isn't there to protect the king's identity, it's there to unravel the identities of the mortals around him. And I don't even think he's trying to do it on purpose. In the stories, characters who come into contact with him lose their grip on reality. They speak in voices and mannerisms that aren't theirs. They quote lines from the play without realizing it. They start playing roles, sometimes literal roles from the king's yellow script. And they don't question it. They just fall into performance, like they've always been in the play. The king doesn't need to speak. Just being near him dissolves the self, until all that's left is a puppet following a script. The mask rewrites people. It incites madness. The whole thing with the mask reminds me that, yeah, it's probably for the best. We can't see his true face and probably don't want to. Probably couldn't handle it. Also, it adds to the mystique and the allure of the character, like Pyramid Head. If we saw who was really under there, the illusion would be shattered and he might lose quote-unquote power. Chambers' book barely shows you anything, but it makes you imagine everything. And that shift away from the visible monsters towards psychological erosion is what makes it so influential. And now that you have the forbidden knowledge about the King in Yellow, you will start to see its DNA in cosmic horror media, psychological thrillers, and games like Chorus of Carcosa that prize atmosphere over explanation. You won't be able to unsee it. Stories that don't answer questions, they cause them. They inherit the structure of fear Chambers helped to shape. Not fear of what is behind the door, but fear that the door has always been open and we were the ones who kept walking closer. But then we actually have to ask, outside of the play, outside of the book, who is the King in Yellow actually, or what does he signify? How do you and I in real life try to make sense of this entity that doesn't have a form? Because the king never reveals himself clearly. He's a whisper through fabric, and because of that, people have spent over a century trying to define what he actually is. Some see him as a god, an entity like Hastur, later folded into the broader Cthulhu mythos by Lovecraft and others. Some see him as an actor trapped in a role, or a symbol of madness itself. But I simply ask you, what if he's not a character at all? What if he is the literal boundary breaking down between performer and performance? That moment when the story becomes real and you don't know if you're watching the play or playing a part in it. The embodiment of collapse, when the mask fuses to the face. What if he is the essence of an aspect like death or time? I mean, what do you guys think about all of this so far? I think it's interesting, at least the discussions around it. I've seen some people say they read the actual thing and thought it was boring, but the Tale Foundry also had another interpretation of who the King in Yellow actually was. God. The King in Yellow is God, and he's looking for heaven, for Carcosa, to sit on his throne in his decayed kingdom. I think that there is no one mask, no one name, not even one kingdom. None of it is fixed. That's why every version of the king is different, and For something so rarely present, he is the gravity pulling everything apart. That absence of a definition isn't a flaw, it's design, taking advantage of the innate human need to know everything. The book is supposed to feel incomplete, so your mind will fill in the gaps, and what you fill in with them is usually worse. Because let's be honest, the human mind is demented and infected. The things we come up with can be some of the most sickening and vile things in existence. I mean, just look at where we start in the game. Our main protagonist is in a graffitied elevator, and he walks into a hall that gives the feelings of wanting to vomit. But then again, it's probably just the influence of the King in Yellow, with all of what we see having a yellow tinge to it. Personally, whenever I see yellow, at least too much of it by itself, I get the feelings of instability and illness. It makes my stomach rot. That's why I can't really get into McDonald's. But moving forward, he asks if he's dreaming, as he looks up to see the yellow expanse stretching beyond into a void as black tendrils creep up the walls. He asks if it's due to the medications he's been taking, and soon those black tendrils take shape into abnormally tall shadows. Having just covered Lost in Vivo, I thought this to be a representation of his mind. But then the trance is broken, and when he opens his eyes, he's been reading The King in Yellow. And as he gets up, he reveals the book was sent to him by mistake, and then his phone rings. It's a delivery driver who told him to come down and get his package. But man, does our protagonist have an extremely whiny and annoying voice.
What? Just bring it up. Hello? Hello? God damn it.
Taking a gander around his apartment, it's in a state of disarray. We have pill bottles all over, but one thing that does stand out is on the desk to the left of him. A picture of what seems to be a man in a mask who appears to be raking at it, trying to pull it off. Our guy's an artist. He even tried applying for a grant but was denied. We step through a door, and the space opens up into our sculptor's workshop, but this place is here in a way that shouldn't be possible. Connected to his little cramped apartment is this room. It feels too big for the building it's in, and I wonder how much rent is if they gave him this much space. The ceilings stretch high into his neighbor's floors. The walls are packed with shelves and shadowy figures, mini sculptures and pots that feel more preserved than abandoned. Then we see him, sitting in the center of the room on a plain raised platform. Too simple to be a throne, but placed like one anyway. His body is thin, almost skeletal, draped in loose fabric that barely covers anything, and over his face is a mask. Pallid clay, smooth, folded down in strange ridges where a mouth should be. It looks as if though he's gasping and trying to breathe, but only sucking in the mask. It's bizarre, and it instills fear, but I can't stop looking. And the longer I look, the more it feels like it's not just a sculpture. It's like it's watching, not with eyes, but with presence, and for a second I'm not sure if we're the ones looking at it, or if it's looking at us. I half expected it to get up and start following us, but then our nameless sculptor mentions how he kept having nightmares about him. Oftentimes, people try to make sense of the senseless by giving it form. In a way, it helps them understand, and by doing so, it gives them control over their fear. But for him, it looks like he's drowning in the pursuit of comprehending the masked figure. There's even a bathtub filled black with a hand sticking out, and it gives me the impression of his suffocation. Finding the keys and looking at his desk covered in more drawings of his nightmare, we head into one of his rooms where there's a copy of The King in Yellow, but with a picture on it. And the name of its artist is William Trebo, to which he says he knew him, but doesn't know what happened to him. I also looked up William Trebo and found nothing, other than one being a descendant of Nikola Tesla. Pushing on out of the apartment, an old prick stops and berates us. I don't know what his significance is throughout the story other than to annoy us, but we also come across more colorful people. A mother yelling at her daughter for bringing home a B who would later starve her until she gets an A. Then down the hall, a couple just screaming at each other. And I don't know how people can yell at their significant others like that. My wife and I have never once, not once, screamed or went at each other's throats so hatefully. It's crazy. I love my wife. Unlike the sculptor who scorns and hates this elevator, as it doesn't go all the way down directly. It goes halfway, then you need to hop on the elevator next over to descend to the first floor. However, once down here, we take notice of the newspaper talking about how this apartment is such a maze that 2 tenants have already gotten lost trying to find their apartment. It does feel that way, and this place could easily drive people insane. Finding and opening the package, it's the book again, and he wonders who keeps sending him this. In this universe of Chorus of Carcosa, the book is banned, yet somebody continues to order the same book. In a hall to our left, we find another King in Yellow book, and the art on this, when zoomed in, references the iconic "I wear no mask" scene. Breaking our necks looking up, the apartment seems to pierce into heaven itself, making me think this apartment isn't a real place. Heading over to the other side of the hall, we discover many tenants have plastered their complaints over this door. The person who lives here is the building's manager, and looking at one tenant's letter, we see the person's name is Baki. We try to take the elevator up, but the power cuts out. Then he mutters how he hates the stairs in this house. House? Isn't this supposed to be an apartment? When the doors open, we hear Baki humming. She's fixing a light. The whole hallway's lost power, but she doesn't respond to us. We're forced to take the stairs, but when we reach the stairwell, it's locked, so now we have to find another way up. As we turn around, somebody suddenly crosses in front of us. We follow, just in time for the hallway light to blow out, and so he grumbles again about this stupid house, and that's when we see it. The shadow of the person we've been trying to reach, standing at the end of the hall. But they stay out of reach. Turning the corner, they're gone, and in their place are particles of something causing him to cough harshly, as he complains about there now being mold in the house. I wonder if calling the apartment a house means something, or if the devs just got it mixed up, or maybe they did it on purpose to mix us up. As we approach the doors, we're instantly assaulted with a snap to multiple images. Slowing them down, we see a play before its drapes are torn, a cloudy sky before it's hell-filled with a noose. When we open our eyes, we see what's almost demonic, crimson red hallways and venom sprawling up the walls, books stacked all over, and an ominous humming echoing through the halls. The books, they are all the King in Yellow. On the walls are these symbols, these signs. In the kitchen, we find an excerpt from the book on the wall, with that sign above it, and then on the counter we find a key. But when we get it, we hear a woman's voice asking if that's the music. Turning around, we see her, back turned, waving her hands as if she's conducting, before dissipating into otherworldly dust and floating leftward. Checking the bedroom, we find a noose and a tarot card left on the chair. If this is the kind of influence that the book has on people, I gotta say, don't read books, because books are bad. Anyway, after using the tarot card to figure out the door password, we scurry down another long hallway. Somewhere in the distance, the woman screams again, but once we step through the door, it hits instantly. Images flood our eyes all at once, and if you slow it down, you can make out a mask, a yellow sign, and what looks like mold crawling across the apartment walls before releasing spores. Which loosely spins off another theory in my head at this point, that maybe we're dealing with some kind of physiological virus. Maybe outside the world is at war and the apartment has been hit with some kind of biochemical weapon. Probably not, but hey, the ideas come out of the drawer. Remembering that we're trying to get back to our apartment, we climb the stairs to the 5th floor. We discover a general store, which I think is interesting because I don't think I've seen a store inside of an apartment, but the clerk is blowing it up in the bathroom. So I play with the lights while he's in there because that is what men do. Now, as soon as we get back to the apartment, there is a knock at the door. We check the peephole, and what is standing there is horrific. A woman, hunched over, almost clawing at her face, swaying unnaturally side to side, begging for help. But something's not right. There's a trail of blood leading from our neighbor's apartment straight to our door. Then she looks up, and we see her eyes are gone. There is nothing in her ocular sockets, just empty darkness and blood. I don't open the door. I tell her I'm calling the cops, and that's when she changes. The begging stops, her tone shifts, and she isn't looking for help anymore, she's hunting, and we are her prey. Informing the cop about the woman with her eyes gouged out, she begins asking us questions. But during this time, we hear a loud banging outside the apartment. And then, the cop's demeanor changes, as she tells us we need to open the door too. The dialogue here is reminiscent of the unmask scene in The King in Yellow, where the stranger is told to unmask, except we're not following a script. She says we need to open the door, that everybody's opened their door. But instead of us saying something to the effect of, I wear no mask, like, I have no door, that doesn't work, but you get me, we call her insane and deny the play. The thought is shattered by the banging and screaming of the demon woman. Panicking that we are about to get attacked, we have a panic attack. Our vision distorts, turning gray, and we hyperventilate to our knees, and then something moves in the workshop. Except when we get there, we see nothing. At the center lies still our pallid mask statue. But after inspecting the rest of the shop, finding no one and closing the door, the lights shut off. Finding the flashlight, we follow the blood steps back to our apartment. She's here, humming her tune and dancing in the dark. As we approach, we're hit with another barrage of images, sketches of our masked nightmare, ripping us into layers of fear. Once again, surrounded in the dark yellow tinge and the groaning sounds of the other world, this is our version of hell, our own personal Silent Hill. Behind a door is a hallway filled high with trash bags, and when one falls, the sound of banging takes the stage, for on the other side of the front door is the clay statue, begging us to open up. It doesn't help, as when I turn around, he's right behind me too, with a blanket over his top half. The door to our bathroom no longer makes sense, as it now leads down further into the depths of this nightmare, but this is trippy. The way it's set up, as we're walking through it, it almost looks as if we're going up the stairs at the same time that we're going down, until we hit the fog and step onto the floor, where we seem to be in the halls of a dark and damp basement. Once again, seemingly in every corner, but never doing anything, is the Clayman. But going around, when we walk in front of where he just was, he's moved somehow, instilling a certain fear within me, because now I don't know where he is, and not knowing is killing me. But you know what they say, have care for what you desire, as he makes his presence known soon enough. We find him, standing in the corner menacingly, and this is probably the only jump scare in the game that got me. When our eyes are not on him, he lurches towards us, and he stops when our eyes are on him. Curious to see what death looks like, I give him consent to touch me. Daddy chokes me out. We then catch a glimpse of the tattoos on our right arm, and then the screen cuts to black with a very familiar message. You died. Straight up Dark Souls style, and that's not the only Souls reference the devs tucked into this game. After that, it's a scramble. We run around trying to find Scissors, narrowly dodging him, bursting through the wall like a horror movie Kool-Aid Man, and finally make it to the elevator, giving him the slip. Moving forward and past more strange and random texts, we find ourselves back in the apartment. Reading the letter on the counter, the words have changed, telling us that, as the cool kids say nowadays, we have no Riz. For those of us born in the 90s, Riz is a derivative of the word charisma. Hearing the sounds of pounds down the hall, it comes from a trap door in the floor, chained shut. When I try to open it, our protagonist doesn't let me. So we go through another door, drop down to another floor, and pass by more strange writings on the wall until we get to the red apartment again. We're stuck in a loop. Unable to move forward because of a puzzle, I look up the answer, put the code in, and when we open the door, another set of images flash before us. Regaining consciousness, Morty whines about being outside of the apartment. The thing is, the blind lady is still around. We never escaped her, but we do find her near the elevator, smashing somebody's head in until it's just mush. Wanting to know what death looks like, I give her consent to touch me. Getting hammered by blind mommy, we get a better look at the tattoos on our right hand. Plus, we see the clay that's covered our hands. I don't know what these tattoos mean, but maybe they just look cool. Passing her by, we enter the stairwell, and then it turns into an anomaly hunting game. If we find an anomaly, head back upstairs. If all conditions are normal and we don't find an anomaly, we go downstairs. For example, one anomaly is this reference to the horror movie The Shining. There's the specific patterned red floors and the door to 237. Another anomaly shows up in the form of long black fingers, almost spider-like, gripping the walls around the corner but pulling away slowly. Escaping the stairwell and looking at this absolutely disgusting image of a couch, It's liquefied into a grotesque mass of screaming faces, as if every soul that's ever sat there was absorbed and left to rot in agony. And then we see a rat, eaten by cockroaches. Pressing on, we try to use the elevator, but it's still dead. And then we turn around to see the blind girl, mad humming and stalking us. But after distracting her with the jukebox, we get the hell out of Dodge, only to have the stairs crumble away beneath us. A voice statics from the distance, offering us a way out, but the walkie-talkie is in a small hole in the wall. He said his name was Walter Tallman. I tell him we need to get out of here, but he refuses, says we have to stop this madness, that we need to get to Baki. He offers to help, says he knows the place, but nobody knows this place, not really. However, he is adamant, proudly stating that Baki's never caught him. So who is he, and why would she try to catch him? Walter explains that she's cunning and bad, but that we need to get to her room and that he knows the way out. When we get to her room, it's immediately clear that Baki has a serious vendetta against cockroaches, like she's on a full-on war with them. But she's not here, so we start looking around, and in her journal we find out that the last person that she spoke to was the composer, the blind neighbor, and that she found her in the blue hammam, Baki's secret hideout. If you're wondering what a hammam is, it is a type of traditional Turkish bathhouse, a place for cleansing, isolation, and sometimes ritual, which makes it a fitting place for someone like Baki to disappear into. Considering her battle with the cockroaches, she needs a quiet place. Since the composer was the last person who talked to her, we need to see her place and look for clues. And as she runs past us, we find one of her victims who got hammered to death, but we still need to keep moving forward. However, when we're looking for a way up through this kid's daycare, she finds us. When she bashes through, I hold my breath until we safely close the hatch behind us. When we're at her apartment, we discover loads of copies of The King in Yellow. It was her ordering these books this whole time. Looking in her bathroom, we see the bloody mess she left. On her fridge, notes, with one of them being her to-do list, which tasks her with looking up what asphyxiophilia is, which I did look up, and I encourage you not to look it up, because I won't explain how it has to do with someone restricting their airflow for increased arousal during coitus-related activities. Makes me wonder if she was into it or if she was a victim of it, because the next line is her saying to rip her turtleneck to shreds. Kind of reminds me of Angela from Silent Hill 2. On some other notes, she wonders what's real and what's not, as well as she herself questioning what is Carcosa. In her room, we find a diary. When we start reading it, everything goes dark and we blink into her perspective. She writes that he got straight to the point. The director had chosen her to compose for an upcoming musical, and the man on the phone, only ever referred to as him, said that working with him would be good for her career. As a consequence, she admits to doing something illegal, all because he asked. She read the book, the one that is supposed to be banned, the one that makes people go insane. As we see her memories unfold, we begin to watch her read the book, and she's confused, astounded even. How could something so creatively empty, so boring, be banned? But by that point, she's already read too many versions to count. In her obsession to create a musical masterpiece, she's been trying to find the full text, every line, every act. And that explains the pile of copies. Each one she finds is incomplete. No version has the entire script, so she keeps buying them from all over the world, desperately trying to absorb the whole thing. And that is what makes this interesting, because this is another nod to The King in Yellow in real life, in the book. You never get the full play, just scraps, hints, a strange line here, a haunting phrase there, and that is on purpose. The mystery is the infection. People read it and become obsessed. Readers, scholars, composers, and now gamers, trying to piece it together, convinced that if they just find one more version, one more translation, one more clue, they're going to understand it. But there is no full version. That is the horror. She keeps chasing something that doesn't exist, and it breaks you with the need to know. She says that if she can't complete the book, she's going to go mental and kill somebody. That's when we hear a knock at the door, another copy of her book, but the madness already gripped her and has begun to envelop her. Brought to ruin, she looks outside the peephole and sees somebody in a body bag hanging, but when she goes out, it's empty. So she heads back in, but then is scared straight. She sees herself, screaming and running towards her, convinced that this is her future, her fate if she doesn't finish it. Watching her spiral into a yellow hell, her nightmare mirrors our own. But in hers, there is something we haven't seen yet. Up above, on the wall, watching her, is Rom, the a spider with a pallid mask. It doesn't do anything. It's just an observer, watching the composer's descent into death and madness as she complains about the cockroaches that won't fall in line. And that is when we hear what we're here for. Baki. The composer says that Baki should have exterminated them by now. And then she goes to her secret hiding spot, her blue hammam. Seeing a yellow sign opening up the secret passageway, shouting how she's a siren and for the king, she ascends the steps with insects buzzing in her ears. She finds Baki, looking over her plans for the war. She's convinced the cockroaches are trying to kill her, before telling the composer that she has a can of poison for the cockroaches. Spreading that around the apartment, however, seems to induce the opposite effect, because instead of dying, they scurry to the poison and consume it happily, and she's convinced Baki betrayed her and gave her food instead of poison for the cockroaches. A lot of what we see in this game feels random and doesn't make any sense, and I want to say it's by design. The devs mean for us to be confused, to chase meanings that might not even be there. That's the same effect the book is supposed to have, to drive people mad by making them need to understand it, and just like in the stories, I'm pretty sure some of these strange, out-of-place details weren't meant to be solved or find a direct meaning in. They exist only to unnerve us, to lure us deeper into this vicious loop. Now, for some reason, believing her eyes are telling lies, she tries to remove her traitorous flesh. Then she sings about strolling by a lake in old Carcosa. But then she picks up her scissors and begins her first steps towards Oh, I just realized this was a Bloodborne reference. Gouging her eyes out, she's just missing the bandages to wrap around her head and over her eyes. Because in Bloodborne, almost everyone blinds themselves to better see the truth. Vision is treacherous. The act of seeing becomes an act of sacrifice in order to gain insight. Back to our protagonist, Tallman postulates that maybe she was poisoned. But we shut that down, saying that she would have been dead then. But Walter brushes it off, saying that we have to get Baki. But when I asked him why he cares so much about Baki, he says that we already talked about how she killed his family. Except we didn't. I reviewed the footage and we in fact did not talk about this. What if the voice on the radio is a cockroach? What if Baki killed his family of cockroaches? Or what if I'm just going crazy and think I'm communicating with the cockroaches? And that is when we blip back into the yellow nightmare. Guided by strings of lines from the book, we find ourselves dodging two stalking statues while quickly searching for levers to kill electricity. Once that's done, we open a gate, safely cross water, look up another answer, because I really hate puzzles, and push through this maze of shelves and statues only to somehow end up right back in the apartment, where we find a red sign soapstone, another Dark Souls reference. Reading it is the classic, try finger, but hole. Breaking open that lock on the trapdoor, we dive out of this nightmare and find Baki in her oasis to ask if she's seen the yellow nightmares. She responds, Yvette, Turkish for yes, and says it's chemical warfare, referring to her war with the cockroaches, stating that they're now controlling people, and maybe chemicals explain the spores around the apartment. Never mind, I'm trying to make sense of everything, but I shouldn't. She accuses us of being 1,200 cockroaches in a meat suit. It sounds insane, but she really believes this. She talks about the chittering noises they make to drive people insane. They defecate into the water filtration system. They're dismantling the building and even have passageways that aren't in blueprints. But we don't give a crap about her war. We just want to get out of here. Away from the demon lady, the yellow mold, the weird voice on the walkie-talkie. So she tells us to take the keys and the gun. to go get consumed by billions of bugs outside of the building if that's what we want. Looking at her board, we also see a note that her walkie-talkie was stolen. So maybe the cockroaches are real. Wait, that doesn't make sense. Is Baki real? I don't know. But what I do know is that picking up this super shotgun spells doom for the blind lady. Before exiting, she wants to know how we found her, to which we explain a guy on the walkie-talkie guided us. And with that revelation, she makes peace with the facts that the cockroaches have won. Heading downstairs, past the line of cockroaches on the wall crawling up about to kill her, we find the demon lady waiting for us. Giving her the boomstick. Sucks we don't actually see anything, we just hear everything happen while the screen is black.
Say hello to my boomstick.
My castle is now free, and my fortress is pest-free. Descending down the stairs, ready to leave this hell house once and for all, we're thrusted back into the other side, back into our apartment. It's dark and moldy, and we hear a deep, rapid thumping like something is walking on the walls. Getting ready to cross a plank, we hear a voice telling us not to look back or not look back. Unsure of which one to do or not do, and curious about what death looks like, I give consent to the pallid masked spider to touch me. It webs me up and creeps its fingered hand-leg things on my body before consuming me. After walking forward and ignoring Rom, we open the door ahead to see a giant mask, but we snap back to reality, I think. My voice and speech patterns have changed and I'm reciting words from the book. But moving on, we find a room with a walkie-talkie on the floor. That cockroach knew the way out the whole time. Finally dropping down the hole, I head towards my freedom, reciting the words and finding the blind lady on the altar. We open the doors to find masked statues kneeling before me. Heading into the elevator, I ascend, ready for my crown of thorns. I look around to see the cosmic heavens, the stars.
My kingdom, my throne, my birthright. I am king.
I am no father. I am no stranger. I am king.
As king, I command you to watch the video on the screen, step into this elevator, and get back to hell. Get lost in vivo.